My parents, who I was paying rent to, told me to move out but still keep paying so my brother, their favorite, could take my place. I left the next day and cut all contact, and now they won't stop calling, saying I'm the worst daughter ever because they can't afford their mortgage anymore. Hi, I'm an 18-year-old female seeking advice on an incident that happened between me and my family, which consists of my mom, dad, and older brother, who we'll call Brad. I'll begin with some background for a little context. I was the second child in a family of extremely high-achieving people. Both my parents are college professors. Brad, 6 years older than me, has always been my family's miracle child because it was hard for my mom to get pregnant initially. He's always been the golden child, excelling at whatever he tries. When I was born, expectations were high for me because of Brad's achievements. Though I'm not a top scorer or an exceptional athlete, I am a good artist, something I've pursued from a very young age. It was hard for my family to understand that having different interests didn't make me any less capable. To them, I was the failure child. The bias has been so blatant that even my extended family sensed that I was treated differently. One Christmas, when I was 5, I picked up a bigger gift box despite my mother's insistence to leave it. My dad snatched the box from me in front of everyone, gave it to Brad, and I was handed a smaller gift. Brad got a telescope, while I got yet another dress, which I already had plenty of. The next day, my grandparents sent me a dollhouse, realizing what had happened, and they've been my rock ever since. Brad had just finished high school when I turned 13. He got into a prestigious college and my parents decided to move us to a posh suburb. I wasn't thrilled, as this meant my grandparents would be farther away. Still, I had no say and went along. My parents saved money for Brad's education, and the new house was taken on a loan. Despite not being particularly close, I gifted Brad a watch with my saved-up pocket money to congratulate him. He smiled, but my dad took it away, saying he had already bought Brad a branded one. Brad didn't say anything, but I was heartbroken and decided to distance myself from them. Dinner was a nightmare every night, filled with endless praise for Brad and constant comparisons. I confided in my grandparents and asked to stay with them, but my parents refused, thinking I'd be spoiled. When I turned 14, instead of celebrating my birthday, my parents suggested I start working part-time to cover my expenses, citing the financial strain from buying the new house and supporting Brad. Although they had enough for Brad, they claimed to be tight on money for me. So, I started working at a bookstore, saving what I could. Over time, Brad began causing trouble, missing classes and getting into a serious relationship, which frustrated my parents. They approached me one day, asking me to contribute to the household by paying rent from my earnings. They tried to frame it as teaching me responsibility, but their attitude soured our relationship further. I considered staying with my grandparents, but their home was too far from my school. I eventually agreed to pay rent, though I resented the situation. Over the next 2 years, I distanced myself from my parents, avoided family dinners and focused on school. I was doing okay academically and looked forward to getting into an art school. My parents only cared as long as they were receiving rent. Brad graduated from college but had derailed his life due to his relationship. He couldn't get a good job, and my parents pressured him to return home. When Brad married his girlfriend in Vegas without informing anyone, my parents were furious. Their constant arguments over Brad's life choices made my home unbearable, so I spent more time at my friends' houses and eventually started staying with my grandparents. When Brad's marriage fell apart, my parents were thrilled and blamed his wife for everything. They even asked me to pay for their trip to bring Brad back, which I refused. They found a way to bring him home, and suddenly, I was asked to move into the living room to give Brad my room. With my finals approaching, I was shocked they would even suggest such a thing. They claimed I could stay with my grandparents but would still have to pay rent since my things were still at their house. Brad didn't say a word in my defense. I couldn't believe how cruel my family was being, so I packed my things and left. I told them they could do whatever they wanted with the rest of my stuff because I wasn't paying them anything more. I called my grandparents, explained the situation, and moved in with them. They welcomed me with open arms and shielded me from my parents' attempts to ridicule me. As time passed, my parents' calls decreased, and I realized they didn't really care about me. I focused on my finals, passed with good grades, and applied to art schools. One day, I returned to my grandparents' house, only to find my parents waiting for me. Now comment update to tag you on part 2.